Good evening, ghoulies and ghosties and long-leggedy beasties. This is Alex, coming at you from the underworld, and welcome back to another episode of... Before I get started on this weekend's book review, I would like to address two different subjects. The first one is, I recently created a TikTok account, and I've already started uploading videos in regards to horror movie reviews. Now, as soon as I started doing this, I discovered that the Trump administration wants to ban TikTok from America, so I'm like, well, that's just my shitty luck. But I'm still going to use this platform to upload movie reviews on because I don't spend a lot of time reviewing movies like how I do books. And if for some reason it does actually get banned, I'm just going to use Instagram as that source to upload movie reviews. Which I do understand I could use YouTube to do that, but I don't want to combine movie and book reviews on this channel because my primary goal for this channel is to connect with horror readers. And if you would like to subscribe to my TikTok account, just go to the description section of this video, click on the link that I provided, and that will send you over to my TikTok page. Now, on to the second subject. I really do appreciate readers recommending books for me to review, and I do have a list compiled of the books that you've recommended, so I can give you a shout out when I review those titles. But I really do not prefer for indie authors to recommend their own books for me to review. And truth be it, when that happens, it just feels like it is solicitation. It really feels like a solicitation to me, and it also feels like there's an obligation that kind of goes along with it, and I would just rather stick to books that happen to fall into my lap or have been recommended by readers. The reason why is because I can easily turn down one of those books, whereas if a person were to recommend their own book to me, there's the obligation that makes me feel like I have to read it and review it. And there's a good chance that I will like it, but there's also a good chance that I won't like it. And if I don't like it, I'm faced with one of two things, which is simply not to do a review on that book, or to do a review on that book and be honest about it, which would be dragging the book through mud. And I just don't want to do that because I understand a lot of work goes into creating a book, especially if you are an indie author. Now, I'm not opposed to reading indie books whatsoever because I do read them sometimes, and I do not mind people recommending indie books for me to read. It's just that I want to enter into it because it fell into my lap versus it being pushed on me. So, if you are an indie author, please don't recommend your own book for me to review. And with that said, let's go on and move on to what you can expect with this weekend's book review, which this weekend I am reviewing an indie book that's called Graymatter by Nicolas Gray. And I was also kind of hoping to tie this into maybe like an indie author appreciation month or an indie book appreciation month. So I ended up going online and I looked around to see if there was a month dedicated to that subject. And I didn't see anything set in stone. So for the viewers who are watching this, if there is a month out there for indie books or indie authors where you're appreciating their hard work, let me know and I would like to consider that for next year. But until then, I'm just going to kind of make it random of whenever I decide to review an indie book. And with the book for this weekend, Graymatter, I was really surprised by it because it kind of just fell into my lap. I had seen it on Facebook and Instagram once or twice, and I was first intrigued by the cover because it was kind of like, WTF, what am I looking at here? It was creepy, and it was also at the same time very interesting because I just had no clue what was on the cover. And I started looking into this a little bit more and discovered that the author of this book is also a contributor of creepypastas, which obviously, you know, I love horror, so I'm going to love a creepypasta. I mean, hell, I grew up loving urban legends, so it's a given I'm going to love creepypastas. And because of this, I decided to go in and just slam my money down, get the ebook version, and give it a shot. And truth be it, I was very pleasantly surprised because the stories in here are very diverse. They are pretty well written. And also at the same time, they were able to invoke with me fun and dread at the same time, which is what I would expect with any creepypasta. But without me rambling on any further, let's go in and get down to what you can expect from this awesome indie book. Unfortunately, I don't have a print copy of Graymatter by Nicolas Gray, but it is available in print and ebook, so getting your hands on a copy is not hard to do whatsoever. Now, with the 8 stories in this book, there's a pretty good diversity to them, and for the most part, they feel like they're cautionary tales, as well as stories that are psychological and metaphorical. And with this, we do see that there's a range of horror, such as some of the stories are really gruesome, where others feel like they're just suspense thriller. And to give you a good idea of what to expect with these stories, here's a rundown of a few of my favorites, which one is about this Santa type of creature that kidnaps children. Another one is about this creeper van that has the equivalency of a murder house or a haunted house. Then we have a story about like this VHS tape that ends up altering the minds of people so they can actually see reality for what it is. And also there's this really cool story about this bloodthirsty portal in the woods. And for the most part, all of the creatures in this feel like they're original, the concepts feel original, but there are a few stories where I could tell the author might have been paying respects to old school horror classics, and even though he did this, the stories still remained original and he made them his own stories. Now, with that said, those are just a few of the tales that this book has, and as you can tell, this is a book that is a mixed bag of treats for horror fans. Since Graymatter is a book that feels like the stories are intended to be creepypastas, I would like to elaborate on that subject. Now, I know this is going to sound like a filler because a lot of people already know what a creepypasta is, but I'm going to use this opportunity to elaborate for the few who are still in the dark. First, you need to know how the word creepypasta got its name. Although Jessica Roy with Time magazine suggested creepypastas got their start in the 90s with chain letter emails, others claim they originated around the millennium. Also, the term creepypasta was coined circa 2007, and it seems Reddit has been the go-to forum for these types of stories. The word creepypasta is a play on the word copypasta, which means to copy and paste a paragraph or more of text from one online form to the next. In the past, some have considered this to be spam. So much like a copypasta where the text is copied and pasted from one form to the next, the creepypasta is exactly the same thing, except it's either creepy or horrific. In a nutshell, creepypastas are the online version of old school campfire stories where their origins are hard to track. And until YouTube gained a platform for creepypastas, the spoken word art behind this form of urban legend had only been reduced to written word. Among the most famous creepypastas are Jeff the Killer, Slender Man, Eyeless Jack, The Rake, Laughing Jack, and Smile Dog. And while this sounds like a good opportunity to kick back and scare yourself, in 2014, the Slender Man story took a nasty turn as 2 young girls lured their friend into the woods where they stabbed her 19 times. The motive for doing this was to try and make it seem like Slender Man actually existed. Fun facts. Here's a few things you may not know about the author Nicolas Gray. In the past, Nicolas Gray has not only written creepypastas for YouTube narrators, but he has also had his work featured on the official creepypasta website. Here, his stories Portal in the Woods and The Dog Napper were published in March of 2019. Aside from writing, Nicolas Gray was born with a traumatic brain injury. Because of this, it was predicted he wouldn't be able to read, write, talk, or be able to tie his shoes. However, he has successfully broken that stigma. Gray is also a cancer survivor where he suffered from stage 3B Hodgkin's lymphoma in 2012. Since then, he has been cured and is living a happy life with his family. Now, with that covered, it's time to move on to the spoiler section of this video. And this is going to be where I reveal a few things about the book that could ruin the experience for you if you've never read it before. If you wish to click away and skip this section, just scroll down to my comments and you'll find a pinned comment at the top where inside of this you'll see the timestamp that will allow you to click on it and direct you away from the spoilers to the thoughts section. Now, you only have 17 seconds to do this, so ready, set, go! Since everyone has had the opportunity to click away, I want to talk about a few of the stories in Graymatter that impressed me the most. Now, the first story I want to talk about is called Portal in the Woods, and this really felt like a psychological piece to me. But with this story, we're introduced to a young narrator who wants to play ball with his dad, but his dad's really busy, so he just gets brushed aside. And because of this, the narrator decides he's going to go to the treehouse that he shares with his friend named Reese. Well, on his way to the treehouse, he encounters this portal that's floating in the air. And as you would expect, he becomes curious and starts experimenting with what the portal can do. And after learning what its abilities are, he runs off to get his friend. And when he brings Reese there, they start talking about what could be on the other side of this portal. Well, this is when Reese gets the bright idea. He wants to stick his head inside and have a look around. And, of course, as you can imagine, when he does this, whatever is hiding out in there rips his head off and throws it at the narrator. And the narrator does what I would have done, which is haul ass and hide in the bedroom. Now, this is where the story gets really weird, as if it wasn't weird enough already. So what happens from here is the police go into the woods and they search around and they find Reese's dead body, but there is no portal. With this, I tend to think there might be one of two possibilities. One, maybe the portal is real. Maybe it does exist, but if that's the case, how did it get there? What's on the other side? And why did it choose now and there to show up? So the questions continue and they're never answered. Now, the second concept is we've been sold a lie, because the thing is, the narrator here is insane in the membrane. He created this whole concept of there being a portal so he could deal with the fact that he murdered his friend. And I tend to think that's a more reasonable concept to accept, because we have what feels like a conclusion with that. But I still don't have enough answers to say it's one thing or the other, and because of it being written this openly, I really enjoyed the mystery that came along with it, and truth be it, I don't want to know the answers. I just want to remain ignorant to why the portal was there or if it existed in the first place, because I think that's the charm of this story. Now, the second story I really enjoyed was called Morbidio. And with this one, it felt like it took two of my favorite horror movies, which is Videodrome and also They Live, and combined it into a brand new scenario. Now, with this story, we are introduced to a narrator who has been suffering from depression, exhaustion, and no sex life, which he has a girlfriend who he really loves, and he thinks she's the best thing to ever happen to him, and he does not want to lose her. So he's been going to doctors, psychiatrists, he's been trying drugs. Nothing works. But Valentine's Day is coming around the corner and he doesn't want to disappoint her, so he gets the bright idea he's going to spice up their relationship with a porno. So he goes to this CD video rental, and when he goes inside, there's this creeper behind the counter, and the creeper's like, "Oh, go upstairs with me. I have a video that'll change your life." So the narrator goes up there and he gets this video called Morbidio. And when he goes home, pops it in, he starts watching it, and all of this trippy shit starts happening. And he ends up passing out, but when he wakes up, like, everyone in the world around him are these alien insect monster things, and they've always existed in our world, but after watching the video he can really see people for what they are, which are these horrible things. And the reason why he feels so depressed and drained and has no sex life is because his girlfriend is one of these things. So at this point he goes batshit crazy on her alien ass, and just the ending is a great payoff. And once again, there's a little bit of psychology to this one, such as, was he crazy, or does the video really exist? Again, I don't want to know the truth because the mystery is part of its charm. Now, the third story that I really enjoyed was called No Smoking. And with this story, I'm an ex-smoker, so I could relate to it, especially the addiction part. But we have where a night shift has gone to work and they discover that their manager no longer wants them smoking on the premises because two of the workers by the name of Benny and Steve had been smoking and they were never found again. So because of this, no one is allowed to smoke due to missing persons. Well, as the night progresses, there's this one asshole guy on shift by the name of Tom. And trust me, we all know Tom. He's that asshole who thinks the world owes him, and he's like, it's my God-given right to do blah, 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 and I'm gonna do it. So that's his mentality about smoking, and even though he's not supposed to smoke on the premises, by golly, he's gonna smoke. We all know it's gonna happen. We just don't know when and where. Well, he's a on-work bully. No one likes him. And so one of the co-workers suggests to him, well, you know what? There's a place out back where there are no cameras, and that's where Benny and Steve used to go smoke. Well, Tom's dumbass don't think anything about it, so he steps out back and lights up, but when he does, he gets like just this really creepy feeling, and he looks over by the dumpsters, and there's this 7-foot monster that it just has like this muck on it and tumors all over it, and it wheezes when it breathes. But it also has these really nasty fangs and claws, and just the way the monster's described is something that felt very original. And from here, the monster goes over to Tom, rips his chest open, takes his lungs out, and squeezes all of that just tar from his lungs into its jaws. And I really couldn't help but think that we were seeing the physical manifestation of what smoking really does to you. And it was so gross. It was so gross. And this is the first time I've ever seen a story where it's created a monster that deliberately goes after smokers because it wants to suck out the juices from their lungs. So that was very original, very cool, and it might be my favorite story in the whole book. But even though those are the top 3 stories I decided to talk about, there are other stories in this that I enjoyed just as much. But these 3 just really felt like they needed my attention to speak about because they were just so well thought out. I want to use this opportunity to bitch about Tom, who is in the story No Smoking. Now, the thing is, with this asshole, he is the personality type that's a dime a dozen, and what I mean by that is he is a complete smartass, and whenever he pisses someone off or gets under their skin or offends somebody, he's like, oh, I was just joking, can't you take a joke? Trust me. We know the type, they do exist. And personally, if I was his co-worker, I would have done the exact same thing that happened in this story, which was to tell the old asshole to go out back and have a cigarette. I mean, yeah, I know I'd be leading him into a trap, but also at the same time, management ain't gonna get rid of a person like him. People like him, they just hang around. They never go anywhere. They just linger, and they just make everyone else's life a living hell when they could just go on and find some other place to annoy. But anywho, I would have been that individual who, after I told Tom to go out back, my fat gay ass would have leaned against the building, just put my hands on my chest like this, and as that monster got him, I would have been like, que sera, sera, bitch. Out of the 8 stories in this book, 5 of those were really awesome, which those were Portal in the Woods, No Smoking, Morbidio, My Son Heard Santa on the Roof, and Trunk or Treat. The stories that were simply okay were The Pillman and The Dognapper, but the one story that I just really couldn't connect with was Highway to Hell, which it was written very well and the characters were fleshed out, but it just wasn't my type of story. So overall, I feel like the good outweighs the bad here, and because of that, I feel like it was money well spent. Now, one of the things I really loved about this book is the charm that it has in regards to creepypastas. Like, when I go online to read a creepypasta, it feels like I've come across this document that's warning me about something that's in my external world which could hurt me. And with that same type of emotion, I see that Nicolas Gray was able to invoke that same degree of tangibility and dread with his stories. So for that, they were extremely fun to read. Now, out of the holiday-themed stories, which I would include in my top 5 favorite, which is Trunk or Treat and also My Son Heard Santa on the Roof, those kind of felt like cautionary tales. And I say this because with Trunk or Treat, we see where parents are doing everything possible to protect their kids. And no matter what a person does, a predator can still get in and destroy everything. Then with My Son Heard Santa on the Roof, it really warns that you should listen to your children, because if you don't, there could be repercussions. And so I really felt like the whole message of those being cautionary were strong. Now, I did also find a metaphorical story in this, which was no smoking, and with the creature that's presented, it really felt like it was a physical manifestation of what smoking does to our bodies. And by how the creature is presented, it just felt original and creepy, and I just loved everything about it. Now, at the end of the day, did the book scare me? No, it didn't. I wasn't scared. Was I creeped out? Yes, I was. Morbidio definitely creeped me out. And then also I was grossed out with that same story and no smoking. So there's a few good gross outs in here. And overall, the suspense of everything just felt very intriguing and it sucked me in. So at the end of the day, I was very entertained. And truth be it, that's what matters the most. Was I entertained? Yes, I was. It was worth it. Graymatter by Nicolas Gray was a fun read. It was thought-provoking, and there were stories in this that were suspenseful as well as gross and also creepy. So for those reasons of how everything just blends together, this was well worth my money and I do recommend it. Now, with that said, if you are looking to buy this for your kid, if your kid hasn't read stuff like Clive Barker or Stephen King, then this might be a little much for them because some of the stories are explicit. But if they've already started reading authors like the ones I mentioned, then this is pretty safe. But overall, if you're looking for a quick, fun read, Graymatter is it. On to the questions. My first question is, what is a horror book you would recommend that was inspired by an urban legend or creepypasta? Load up the comments. My second question is, what is the scariest creepypasta you've ever read? Personally, mine was The Rake, and long before I even read the story of The Rake, I had seen the photo of it, which was the humanoid creature thing that was in the story behind the story segment, and that right there was enough to give me nightmares for a lifetime. But I decided to look the story up and read it, and this was back when I was really naive, and truth be it, I believed every single word of it. I truly did. And then I saw this video where some old lady was talking about how the rake came to the foot of her bed and watched her sleep, and Lord, oh, that was enough to make me sleep with lights on for the next few years. But luckily enough, I grew out of my naive stage, so we're cool now. But totally, load up the comments on what the scariest creepypasta is that you've ever read. And with that said, let's go on and close out the video, which before I do, I would like to say thank you to Lisa G., Joseph Baylott, and Melody Romeo, which Melody Romeo is also an author. She writes historical fiction and historical fantasy fiction, so be sure to check out her books, which they're available online and they're easy to get in print and ebooks, so it's just right there at your fingertips. And the reason why I'm giving them a shout out is because they've been nice enough to contribute to my Patreon account. And if you would like to contribute as well, the link to my Patreon is in the description section of this video. And for $5 a month, I'll give you a shout out at the end of my videos, which if you're an author or a creator, I'll also let people know what you do and where they can find your work. So that would be the $5 tier, and if you would like to do the $10 tier that's available, you still get that shout out at the end of every video, but once a month I send you over one of my photographs, which I do creepy photography on the side, so after I send that to you, you can print it out, do whatever you want with it. But if you are not able to contribute to my Patreon, no sweat. All I hope is you continue to return to this channel so we can have a fun time together discussing horror. And if you would like to connect with me on social media, links to my Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok are all in the description section of this video as well. And if you have not subscribed to my channel, be sure to do so, as well as clicking the notifications bell. And until we see each other again, I hope you have a wonderful week and sweet nightmares.